Welcome back to the Gridiron Expert. We are about 4 months away from the first release of the AP College Football Rankings, but it is never too early to start thinking about where some of the top teams in the nation should be ranked going into the 2018 season. So today we are going to break down our 2018 Way Too Early Top 25. No matter where you look, everyone's Way Too Early Top 25 is going to look completely different. No one truly knows where these teams are going to fall when the rankings are released in August. When I created my Way Too Early Top 25, I had three major factors that came into play: recruiting, number of returning starters, and a way the team finished last season. So our top 10 is number 1, Alabama, followed by Clemson, Georgia, Ohio State, Wisconsin, Oklahoma, Michigan State, Washington, Miami, and West Virginia. And we'll touch a little bit on all these teams very briefly. So starting off with Alabama, my Way Too Early Top 25, number 1 team in the country. They have 12 returning starters this season, have a bit of a quarterback battle going on between Jalen Hurts and Tua Tagovailoa. I personally believe that Tua Tagovailoa is the better option for the Crimson Tide, but I'm very curious to see how Nick Saban handles the situation and who he names as starter going into this season. They lost both their offensive and defensive coordinators during the offseason, so they were quick to replace those. And as always, they have questions at the quarterback position and a little bit on the defensive side of the ball with only 4 returning starters. Everybody freaks out a little bit, but keep in mind it is Alabama. They have a great amount of talent there, and they have the best coach in college football right now, Nick Saban. They, of course, will be fine. I debated for a long time who should be number 1. It was a very close call between Alabama and Clemson. I decided to go with the Crimson Tide, but Clemson was a very, very close second, returning 15 starters from a team that lost to Alabama in the college football playoff last season. They got Trevor Lawrence, the number 1 pocket passing quarterback in the nation in their recruiting class, and their defense is going to be their foundation this season, returning 8 starters on that side of the ball and recruiting a lot of the top defensive players in the nation. So defense does, in fact, win championships, and that is going to be Clemson's key to success this season. Now, Kelly Bryant is a capable quarterback. We saw what he was able to do last year, but he was very sporadic at times. So people are saying that Trevor Lawrence and Kelly Bryant could have a little bit of a quarterback battle themselves, but I do feel like it is Bryant's job to lose. Georgia, the national runner-up, I have them at number 3. They had the number 1 ranked recruiting class this season. They also returned Jake Fromm, the sophomore quarterback, who led them to the national championship as a freshman last season. Out are Nick Chubb and Sony Michel, but in come DeAndre Swift, who I thought played phenomenal last year in the time that I was able to see him play. So he's able to fill in that running back gap there. 5 returning starters on defense. Some are a little concerned about that. They lost some huge playmakers on that side of the ball, but Kirby Smart being a defensive-minded coach, I think the Bulldogs will be just fine. And really, it should be the SEC East champions for them. I don't see any team that can be able to compete against them in the SEC East this year, so they should have a clear path to the SEC championship game. Ohio State sitting at number 4. Another quarterback battle here between Dwayne Haskins and Tate Martell. I feel the job right now, who has the edge, is Dwayne Haskins. We were able to see a little bit of him in that Michigan season finale, getting them to victory there. That's going to be something to keep our eye on. They also have J.K. Dobbins and Mike Weber at running back. So if one of the quarterbacks does struggle, they will have a solid running back there to fill the gap. Wisconsin, another team that I think could battle Ohio State. Remember, Wisconsin lost to Ohio State in the Big Ten Championship last year, which prevented them from going to the college football playoff after an undefeated regular season. Wisconsin returns Jonathan Taylor, Alex Hornibrook, and all 5 of their offensive linemen to complete 9 returning starters on the offensive side of the ball. And we always used to say that Wisconsin had trouble on offense. This year, I think they're going to be very explosive and very dangerous. This is a recipe for success for Wisconsin to potentially get to the college football playoff if they can get over Ohio State. Oklahoma, the key here, who's going to replace Baker Mayfield? Well, they have Kyler Murray, who really had limited action behind Mayfield, but is a dual-threat quarterback. The question will be, can he live up to the hype and be able to succeed Mayfield and do the great things that he did? I'm very excited to see how that goes. The defense is a bit of a question, but Lincoln Riley did a great job getting another top 10 recruiting class for the Sooners. Michigan State, they are one of the most experienced teams in the country going into the season and could be a potential college football playoff dark horse just a little bit. They have 19 returning starters, including L.J. Scott, the star running back. Their quarterback returns, and then they also have Felton Davis, the star wide receiver. So Michigan State is going to be a major threat in the Big Ten this year, and it would not surprise me to see them in the college football playoff. Mark D'Antonio does a great job coaching that squad. 19 returning starters. Watch out. Have them sitting here at number 7. Washington returned 17 starters, also including their star running back in Myles Gaskin and star quarterback in Jake Browning. Their defense was a little bit inexperienced and young last season. They returned 9 starters on that side of the ball. should be much more improved, much more experienced. They also have the potential to win the Pac-12 and get back to the college football playoff after just missing out last year and losing the Fiesta Bowl to Penn State. Miami, saw them. They were poised to get to the college football playoff and had a horrible end to the season, losing in a horrible game to Pittsburgh to close the season, Clemson in the ACC championship, and then losing their bowl game to Wisconsin, which was technically a home game as it was played at the Orange Bowl. They returned 16 starters. They have the number 8 recruiting class. Malik Rozier, I have a lot of faith in him. People criticized him a lot last year, but I have a lot of faith in him. Think he could do good things for them. Mark Richt, everybody complains that he's not able to get over the hump. We saw him do that with Miami last year. It looked like they were going to be poised for an ACC championship. Just fell short. I think they are the team to beat in the ACC once again this season, but I have them ranked just a little lower at number 9. West Virginia, a lot of people have them ranked around 15th, 20th, somewhere around there. It's a team I'm very, very excited to watch this year. A team that I do think could be a college football playoff dark horse. One of the most explosive offenses in college football, no doubt. 14 returning starters, including one of the best quarterbacks in the nation in Will Grier, and he has his favorite target coming back in David Sills, the 5th. A lot of people criticize their defense. They returned 7 starters on that side of the ball, and they got some key transfers and key recruits on that side of the ball that could really up the Mountaineers' defense and make them probably the biggest competitor to Oklahoma in the Big 12. Penn State, 10 returning starters. They lose Saquon Barkley, and most importantly, they lose their offensive coordinator and Joe Moorhead, who left to take the job at Mississippi State. Penn State will be in good hands. They had another huge recruiting class, number 4 in the nation. James Franklin knows how to get the best out of this team. They do return Trace McSorley at quarterback. Penn State will be just fine, but I do have them behind a couple of these Big Ten schools. I believe it's 3: Ohio State, Wisconsin, and Michigan State. So there are behind 3 Big Ten schools in these rankings. So Penn State might not have the success they've had the past 2 years, but it should be another successful campaign. Stanford. Another team people had a little bit low. Didn't really understand. 17 returning starters, including Bryce Love, one of the top running backs in the nation, potential Heisman finalist or winner. KJ Costello, who was able to beat out Keller Christ, who transferred to Tennessee. He showed signs of brilliance in this past season. Stanford is poised to compete against Washington for the Pac-12 title. So I'm very excited to see that this year. Very excited to see David Shaw get the best out of his Cardinal team. Michigan, the key here is whether Shea Patterson is eligible or not. They'll still be fine if he's not. They have Brandon Peters, who has been up and down, but should be a capable quarterback. They return plenty of starters, 7 on offense, 8 on defense, which I said last year their problem was their defense. That was very inexperienced, didn't think it was going to work out well for them, and they went 8-4 just as I predicted. But the defense will be much more experienced, much better this season. The question will be who's going to be at quarterback. Will Shea Patterson be eligible, or will it be Brandon Peters? Nonetheless, they are still a top 15 team, but they do have a very difficult schedule and some very difficult competition. Virginia Tech, Josh Jackson's going to be, he already has a full year as quarterback behind him, should be much more improved. Bud Foster, people are concerned about the defense, but I never want to doubt him. I know he's going to get the best out of his squad. Very excited to see the Hokies this season. Auburn, a team people think should be ranked a little higher, has been dealing with quite a bit of injuries lately. Something to keep our eye on, but Jared Stidham does return, so that is huge for them. I think Auburn is the only competitor, besides maybe Mississippi State, to Alabama in the SEC West. They are Alabama's biggest threat in the SEC West, so that is something to keep our eye on. Have them at a respectable 15th. USC, biggest question is who is going to replace Sam Darnold? That's something we have to keep our eye on. They have a bit of a quarterback battle going on there. Still 13 returning starters. And then one thing to keep our eye on, Boise State at 17, UCF at 19. Your 2 group of 5 schools, just 2 rankings apart from each other. Both are expected to win their conference, the Mountain West and the American Athletic, respectively. So it's going to be very interesting to see how the season plays out for these 2 schools, because as you remember, the highest ranked group of 5 team, conference champion, makes the New Year's Six Bowl. So Boise State and UCF both have very explosive offenses. UCF being led by Josh Heupel, new head coach. I'm very excited to see both of these squads. UCF, the national champions of last year, going undefeated and defeating Auburn in their bowl game. So both teams should have very explosive offenses. Both should win their conference. I'll be shocked if neither did. But something to keep our eye on there to see who gets that New Year's Six Bowl berth. And then Notre Dame, quarterback battle between Brandon Wimbush and Ian Book, who led the Fighting Irish to that win over LSU in their bowl game. That's something to keep our eye on. The defense is a little bit of a concern, but most of the offense, 9 returning starters on defense, 6 on offense. They did lose Josh Adams and Quentin Nelson, their star offensive guard. So I'm very interested to see how the Fighting Irish do this season, but they should be poised for another respectfully 9-10 win season. Mississippi State, a team I'm very excited to see this year. Joe Moorhead brings his brilliant offensive mind down to Starkville with one of the best quarterbacks in the SEC in Nick Fitzgerald, who suffered a horrible ankle injury at the end of last season. But should he be able to come back, should he be at full strength when the season starts, it will be a very explosive offense for Mississippi State as they return 8 starters on that side of the ball. Mississippi State could be a sleeper in the SEC West and could challenge Auburn for that second place spot right behind Alabama. So that's going to be something to keep our eye on. Florida State, Willie Taggart coming in as a first-year head coach down there for the Seminoles. Now the question is going to be who's going to be their quarterback. DeAndre Francois suffered a horrible injury in the season opener against Alabama that kept him out for the entire year. Keep in mind, he just got caught with about 20 grams of marijuana. How will they use that disciplinary? I don't think anything major will come of that because they need him this season to have some success. They only return 13 starters, but 9 of those are on the offensive side of the ball, and Willie Taggart knows how to get in a very explosive offense. So Florida State, give them a couple years under Willie Taggart, they will definitely be back up in the top 10. South Carolina, a team that finished the season very strong last year. Will Muschamp is doing a great job with the Gamecocks. They get Jake Bentley back at quarterback, one of the better quarterbacks in the SEC, I believe, and then Deebo Samuel, a very, very explosive wide receiver who was out for the majority of last season with an injury. He's back, Bentley's favorite target, and I'm very excited to see how they do this year. I think if Georgia has any competitor in the SEC East, it's going to be South Carolina. Texas, great finish last year, winning the Texas Bowl over Missouri. A game that not many people thought they were going to be able to win, but they played very well under Tom Herman's first season. A little bit of a disappointment in some people's eyes. This next year should be a lot better. They have some very key home games if they want to be able to compete in the Big 12. 8 returning starters on offense. Number 3 ranked recruiting class, but another quarterback battle. Shane Buechele or Sam Ehlinger. So that's something to keep our eye on. Something that I'm very curious to see how Tom Herman handles. He played a little bit of both last year, so who will he use this year as a starter, or will he continue to play both? That's going to be something very fun to watch. But Texas should take major steps forward in his second year. LSU, only 10 returning starters and a very, very major offensive struggles. Miles Brennan coming in at quarterback, major cause for concern for the Tigers. They lose DJ Chark, a very explosive wide receiver, and then Darius Geis, their top running back. Something to be a little concerned with LSU. I said their defense was very young last year, and it was. They returned 6 of their defensive starters from last year. The defense should be much more improved, and that was LSU's going to have to rely on if they want some success in the SEC West. And then Arizona, some people might criticize me for this. I'm very excited to see Arizona this year. They have Khalil Tate, a very explosive dual-threat quarterback. We saw that last year. Then they bring in Kevin Sumlin. As we all know, we've seen what Kevin Sumlin can do when he has a solid quarterback, such as Johnny Manziel or even Case Keenum down at Houston. So he's going to come in here, develop Khalil Tate, something I'm very excited about. They have 16 returning starters, 7 on offense, 9 on defense. The defense was a concern last year. It should be much more improved this year. Arizona could be a sleeper in the Pac-12, and I had them at the very end of my way too early top 25. And then Kansas State, TCU, and Oregon all receiving votes, just missing out. Some people say TCU should be ranked, but with only 1 offensive starter returning this season, only 6 on the defensive side of the ball. I had them out just briefly, give them about 2 wins to start the season. They do have a major game against Ohio State, I think around week 3. So I have them just on the outside, but I think they will be able to slip in after only a few weeks of the season. Oregon, Justin Herbert, of course, very explosive quarterback there who has been battling injuries. But Mario Cristobal should be able to get the Ducks back to national prominence. And then, of course, Bill Snyder has a very solid team at Kansas State this season. The Big 12 is going to be a very interesting conference to watch with a lot of these teams, such as Texas, Oklahoma, West Virginia, TCU, and Kansas State. It's going to be a very fun conference to watch, see who comes out of there and who is facing off in the Big 12 championship game. So this is our way too early top 25. This is what you've got. Please leave in the comments what you think of these rankings, who you think should be ranked higher, who should be ranked lower, or who's not ranked at all. I'd love to hear you guys' feedback. We have a lot more videos coming up with you, including a very interesting study on home field advantage, so keep your eyes out for that. Thank you for watching. Please continue to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will see you next time on The Gridiron Expert.